We're thrilled and really feel really privileged to host today two artists who will be speaking to one another, Anri Sala to my immediate left and Rama in the middle. And I won't mention the show that is currently up at Société Gallery, Crystallizing, but you should all go see it. And we're also really thrilled to have Natalia Gierowska help us lead through the conversation, introduce the two artists to those who don't know them and to everyone else. So with that, I would like to ask you to please help me welcome all three to the stage.
I'll check the sound first. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you all for joining us today. It's a huge pleasure to be here in such notable company. And so before we start speaking, I'd like to introduce our panelists. So Rama lives and works in Tirana. He trained as a painter at the Academy of Fine Arts in Tirana, where he later taught as a professor. After several years of working as an artist in Paris, he returned to Albania in 1998 to serve as Minister of Culture and has become Prime Minister since 2013. His first solo exhibition is currently on view at the Société Gallery, so you should all definitely go and see it. But his work has also been presented in places like the Venice Biennale, Sao Paulo Biennale, Centre Pompidou, or the New Museum in New York, to name a few. Anri Sala, on the other hand, constructs transformative, time-based works through multiple relationships between image, architecture, and sound. His works investigate ruptures in language, syntax, music, creating dislocations which generate new interpretation of history, supplanting old fictions and narratives with less explicit and more nuanced dialogues. His work has been the subject of several solo exhibitions, also at the Centre Pompidou, Poste de Commence, Kunsthauptgangs, Buffalo Biopark System, Mudam Luxembourg exhibition, to name also a few. There's plenty of more. As for myself, I am the editor-at-large of the Brooklyn Rail, and I co-lead the Stefan Gierowski Foundation, which is based in Warsaw, in the name of my grandfather, who was one of the abstractionists of the 20th century. So now that we have that presented, I'd like to actually start with an anecdote. And the anecdote is that when I was straight out of high school, I was invited by an Albanian friend to a talk at the AA, which is the Architectural Association in London. And Eddie was giving a talk about his work as a painter and as an artist. And I even managed to squeeze one question in. But because I was then studying politics, it was very important to me to see that it is possible to merge the two. It is possible to operate between the two realms. And so I'm extremely glad that after all of these years, we can join and reconvene to have a much more in-depth conversation about intuition, memory, and becoming, and not just with Eddie, but also with Anri. So, without further ado, it goes without saying that it's a very special conversation. And it's special because it's not often that we encounter a dialogue so layered, which is between an artist and a prime minister. And of course, history offers examples of such encounters, but in much more hierarchical form. So we can think of a patron, monarch as a patron, who would commission works to immortalize his greatness and power, or realize political or other gains. And in more recent times, we can think about heads of state who would promote national artists through their cultural programs. But the relationship between Rama and Anri Sala did not emerge as a result of patronage or representation, but it developed in parallel. And it is very much grounded in exchange and shaped through collaboration. And it has unfolded and continues to unfold alongside moments of serious historical transformation. So at the heart of this conversation is not just a friendship, but it's a shared way of thinking about the city, which is Tirana, about perception, about intuition and memory, and how visual, spatial, and sonic forms can produce change and perhaps even make transformation perceptible. So the relationship oscillates between mentorship, friendship, collaboration. So Eddie, before you formally stepped into politics, you were deeply engaged as a painter and a professor with a very strong public voice, which was the result of the student movement. And Anri, your trajectory as an artist began in Tirana, where you studied at the Fine Art Academy before you moved to Paris, where you moved in with Eddie, who was already living there. So as a very introductory question, I'd like to ask, how did this friendship first take place? And whether there was an immediate spark or mutual understanding?
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, first of all. This friendship, this relation started roughly when I was 10 years old. Our parents were close friends, and this is when we met. And I think it's more Eddie taking interest on me. I was just like a kid, which maybe was painting a little bit further or beyond what a child does usually when given the colors. And then what did mark me at the time is also the presence of Eddie, not only somebody who tells, but also somebody who listens and who sees, although I was not aware that so much to tell or so much to show in order to be and to be seen. And this is how it started. And then it went through as simple as me having the opportunity in the beginning to start doing some oil paintings using the colors of Eddie, also without spending too much time in anecdotic things, but it was a time back then during the socialist time regime where unless you were an art student in the academy or a recognized artist with the stature of being a recognized artist, you did not have access to that type of color, so you'd be just like using normal watercolor. So that was also a moment of almost of an emancipation, this emotion of being able to mix these colors, but also not being told what to do with them. And I think this is one of the first strong things that I remember in the way as a child that I was, again, without being able to analyze things, is being in the presence of that person that is not telling you what to do. And yet you are learning in that process.
Well, it's always more interesting to look to a friendship from the angle of the little one. But talking about the oil colors, it just came to my mind that, and it's maybe interesting to understand from where we come from. The fact that, as Anri said, in Albania you couldn't buy oil colors if you were not certified as an art student or as an artist. And it was only one shop where you could buy oil colors, and that shop has also a very hilarious episode, because in a moment in time, of course, the oil colors were imported from outside. In a moment in time, an order was issued, no black. So don't import black oil color, because there is no black in the reality of the socialist Albania. Everything is shining. And after some time, someone was smart enough to fuel the narrative that what is going on? This is what the Impressionists said and did. They took off the black. So then the black became the most highly imported paint to counter the narrative that the Impressionists were doing that. Why? Because in Albania, all our life as students, or then for me as a professor, was marked by the fact that art and culture of 20th century was forbidden. So our history of art in the Academy of Arts stopped being visual for us with Gustave Courbet. The rest was just black, and 4 lectures would follow, no slides, but just talks of a professor that was cursing and blaming what came next. So this is the background of our story, and we connected at that time, and we were always connected, although our paths separated because I came back for some reasons and was trapped in Albania, becoming Minister of Culture, and Anri continued to just do his art.
Before I get to the next question, to draw on what you just said, so when you were a professor at the academy, where were the inspiration drawn from? Where would you look to? Was it inwards or was it outwards in a very creative manner?
Listen, I think that because all what happened in art since Impressionists came to the scene was forbidden, we were so much looking for it that even some very, very tiny pieces here and there that would come out from finding forbidden books would be kind of absorbed in a way that no one absorbs in the normal life. So I'm just telling you an episode how I saw Cézanne for the first time. We were in the high school, and someone said, in the art high school, and someone says, there is a Cézanne in a house of someone very important. And his daughter is in love with a friend that I know. So through that friend, we convinced the girlfriend to take out from the library of her father this book of Cézanne, but with a condition. You get this book and you bring it back before 3 o'clock, because my father comes for lunch, and if he doesn't see the book, because a book of art of that category was like a weapon without permission, and you could go to jail. And the point was how to look to this book during the time of school. So I don't know, I'm sure mostly here have watched The Godfather, that moment when Al Pacino goes to the toilet to get the gun and come back to kill this policeman. So Cézanne was put in the toilet, and we were getting out of the classroom one by one and saying, I want to go to the restroom, and going there, taking Cézanne, watching, I don't recall exactly with the pants on or off, but this is something else, and then putting it there and going back. Now, how much time you have to do that? 3 minutes. But it was an eternity, because everything was kind of swallowed and was stamped in the brain in a way that I could remember every image, every page. And it was like the most sacred secret, you know, like, I don't know, incredibly erotic.
It's very interesting.
I would also say that it was a combination in these moments of something which was a bit like both documentary and fiction, real and imaginary, because you're not only looking at an image that you knew it exists but you had never seen, but also you are feeling the emotion of the danger of what it is to be looking at that. So it's difficult in an analytical way, while this is happening in the present moment, to separate the emotion that comes from the unseen from the emotion that comes from the forbidden. I think this is, I remember feeling these moments very much like a mix of the two.
Because I can imagine that when you actually paint afterwards, with the memory, well, the memory interpreting what you saw, but it's mostly through the emotion that you can recreate it properly. But since Eddie, you were never officially Anri's teacher, you were more of his mentor. So at that time, what did you think was at stake for the artists of the post-communist period? What do you think, what was the knowledge that you wanted to share with Anri, considering you're very outspoken and also politically?
Listen, I don't think the word mentor is appropriate, because the truth is that Anri was a born artist. And I always remember the first time he touched the oil colors. It was like, if you see that painting, you don't think that this is a kid of 10 years old. It's like a professional one. And it was not about mentoring, it was just about feeding his time with things, with challenges. And he went through some challenges. For example, he drew, I don't know, hundreds of eggs, and because the egg is a big challenge to be drawn with, or other things. But in general, I would say that it was a very, very interesting time, because you were aware of the frame. So you were aware that you had to be a socialist, realist painter or sculptor. And the point was how to play with that frame and to kind of be not completely dumb, you know, and how to kind of hide and seek behind the status of being a servant of the party and of the state. So and by the way, this was really a very interesting but also very frustrating exercise. And in the art school, we were feeling the wall much closer than in the real life, and much more than the people outside doing other things, because it was always confronting yourself with professors and with a system that say, wait, what is this? So and I think this was the reason why the anti-regime movement started in the art school. And it started in a totally different way than in all other countries, because in the rest of the communist Europe, they had dictatorships, but they didn't have full darkness when it comes to modern art, when it comes to modern theater, when it comes to modern music. And for us, was totally different. So opening the forbidden books in public like this was the start of the anti-regime movement, because was a step beyond the boundary. And this created the right tensions and evolved then in a revolution. Because for us, the wall was the method of socialist realism. And this was all the time, like, as I said, hide and seek game.
Okay, fascinating. And before we trace the history of your shared projects, I also wanted to dedicate a moment to introduce your respective bodies of work, for those who don't know it. So, Eddie, your work emerges from moments of conversations which unfold during your political life. And you draw on documents, be it agendas, be it briefing notes, during your meetings in the Prime Ministerial Office, which is also wrapped in a very impressive wallpaper. And I had the great pleasure to actually see you there. And at first, when you walk inside, you are tricked into thinking that perhaps it's a Baroque wallpaper, but when upon closer inspection, it's actually made out of your drawings. So your drawings are actually the result of a very intensely displaced focus. So this is the way you concentrate on the person that you speak to. But the outcome is it's something that comes very deeply from the subconscious. And Anri, your work is primarily involved with sound, architecture, and duration. And with that, you often rupture narratives and create moments of unexpectedness within something expected. And that is achieved from a very carefully constructed environment. So I would like to point that at the first level, at first glance, the practices might seem extremely different. But as I dedicated some time to look closer at your respective work, I did realize some very significant conceptual overlaps that I'd like to discuss, even though these produce very different visual outcomes for obvious reasons. Even the medium is very much different. So the first thing I realized was a shared interest in language and what exceeds it. Because for Eddie, I think your work begins when the speech leaves off. And you translate the words of those who are in front of you into a completely new visual language. And Anri, I think your work increasingly moved away from language at one point when you felt that frustration that is too charged and too obvious, towards syntax, towards sound, rhythm, all of the things that are in between, and the non-verbal ways of communications. So I wanted to ask both of you, how did you arrive at this point? And whether it was something that you think about consciously or not?
Well, I didn't know all this about my art, but thank you for that. I just, when because of some circumstances that is not the place to explain, I brutally changed, or let's say not I didn't, but my course of life changed brutally. So from being in Paris and hoping to be an artist in Paris, I became the Minister of Culture of Albania. At that moment, I thought my art path was closed, and whatever I did. So, and I even suffered from the sense of the fully unaccomplished effort to do something meaningful in art. So, never thought that art would be part of my life anymore, because I became a minister, so I had to deal with totally different things. And how it happened was without me intending for this to happen. I simply couldn't stand the government meetings. It was the most sophisticated torture for a human brain, to sit there for hours and hours and to listen to all type of things, and to listen about decisions. You had no clue about what they are talking. And so I was drawing all the time on this pile of papers, just drawing. And after every meeting, every Wednesday, the Minister of Education was on my right side, was saying, "Can I take it?" And of course, I said, "Take it, why I care, you know?" And I was drawing with my pen. And after some time, one day I go to see him, and he was under heavy attacks for corruption, which happens often in Albania, by the way, and for good or bad reasons. And I have a conversation with him, and then at the end, before leaving, he says to me, aren't you curious to see my art collection? I said, do you have an art collection? He said, yeah, I collect art. With his face, you know, like nothing guilty has happened. And he shows me a whole portfolio with my drawings. And opening one and one, I start to feel that there was something there. And I felt robbed. And it was very unsettling. So what I could say, it was his. So I go back in my office and I say to my assistant, if I had doubts about this guy, now I have the proof that he is a thief because he stole my art. And she said, what art? I said, my drawings in the government. She said, but do you know how much I have? I said, what do you have? If this is art, I have a lot. I said, where? And she opened her drawer, or whatever it's called. It was full of drawings. Okay, I said, keep them. Don't dare to take any of them and let them. And then I showed Anri. I was very shy because he was already a famous artist. I was a failed one. And I said, look, maybe there is something here. And he said to me, these drawings are worth thinking about, and you should continue, and so on. So at the beginning it was black and white. And then when I went to the municipality and became mayor, because of wanting to paint some buildings, I took colors on my desk, and the colors then joined the drawings. So this is how, since then, I always have my desk full of colors. But I never think about it. I just do it during the conversations with my minister. So talking about tax or security or pandemic or crisis here and there, I do this all the time. And it's not, and I am listening very, very carefully to what is the conversation. And to cut the story short, some years ago I saw a very interesting study, I guess from the psychology department of the MIT, about people that doodle during meetings. There are many people that do this thing. And two findings I always remember were, number one, people that doodle during meetings have average 30% more concentration on what is being talked. And second, average 50% less stress from the topic than the rest. And I feel it when when I can't draw for some reasons. It's really not good. But fortunately, people now know this. Nobody gets offended. Nobody feels strange because coming and having someone painting in front of you while you are saying, "I need a home" or "I need a," it's not normal. But this is how now. The rest is on you to explain why I do this and what this.
I can only try. Perhaps printing out the study to your guests can take away the feeling of stress. But one thing that I picked up on this is that there's clearly a very beautiful continuity of mentorship between you two, because it started off with you, in a sense, mentoring Anri, and then Anri coming back in that role. But with the same question, Anri, how did you arrive at the topic of your interest in language, and then the departure from the interest of language, actually?
Well, what brought me to language in the first thing was the absence of it, meaning I fall upon something that involves language or the absence of language, which is what brought the one of my earlier work, which is a bit like the umbilicum of where the body of work has grown, which is Intervista, where I found this reel of my mother in a younger age when she was one of the secretaries of the, to translate it really, of the communist youth, and where she's giving an interview with the public television, the only one we had back then, but the sound was lost, also because back then it was filmed in 60mm, not Super 16, so sound was never part of the roll, and was recorded apart. So I found this, to cut it short, I chanced upon it, took it with me to Paris, to be able to see it in a moviola, and then I realized the sound wasn't there, and in the process of finding what she said, I ended up going into the school for the deaf and mute children, and to be helped by the teachers, and as well as the adults having gone through the school to read her lips. So I arrived to language through its absence, and then, but at the same time, this encounter or this relation to language was not very long-lived, because it's the same work that made me aware of the ambiguity that there is in language. The language is not transparent at all. And that came with Intervista, because in Intervista, when I show it to a foreign audience, they'll think there's this moment when my mother does not seem to not agree that she said what she said, which is not at all what she's disagreeing with, but is how she articulated it, what you call in French langue de bois, the fact that she was shocked at what comes across as a lack of articulation for somebody who's very articulated. So, and this is a moment that while the majority of people see in it a conflict with content, I immediately became aware there is a conflict with syntax. And this is this doubt that the process of this film raised, triggered in me about language, that little by little, but soon enough, brought me away from language. And it came back in my work only a few times. Once was Dammi Colori with Eddie, the project on the colors. And then again, maybe once more, something which has to do in the relation between language, words, and colors, but based on Wolof, one of the languages spoken in Senegal.
What you said about your mom being particularly concerned about the syntax is interesting, because it appears that it's almost like an Orwellian case of the Newspeak, where the language was completely broken down and stripped away in order to remove the ability to express yourself and to think in abstract ways, which also then has a connection, I can imagine, to fine art and to artists, as your vocabulary is restricted. So the next point of convergence, I think, between your work and your production is, I think, a shared engagement with time, because Anri, your work is very explicitly dealing with time. It is time-based, and then the duration of it is shaped and dictated through rhythm and sound, which is the outcome of what you just said, that you stepped away from language. And Eddie, in your drawings, I think that time seems to deposit in a completely different manner, which is in your agendas and on the margins of the pages. So how would you say that time enters your practice? Would you say that your doodles are a record, a governmental record, or a diary of governance?
No, I think my doodles are just covering the government's records, because they are done on government papers, which sometimes causes me big problems with the protocol, because they cannot put the paper anymore in the protocol. It's already painted. But they are kind of superposed, but not really related. And I think it's the difference in my case is I have to get out early in the morning and think about totally different things than doodling or than colors or than, and it's very heavy. It's very heavy, and nowadays it's very poisonous for everyone, I guess, because Nowadays, there is no more verticality in the relation of politics or of decision-making level with the people. Everything is horizontal through the social media and through the so high intensity of the information and disinformation, and also through the fact that more you throw garbage, more you get traction. So garbage gets much more traction than the boring truth about something or something else. And to deal with that in daily basis, when you also are involved personally, you are trashed personally, your family is trashed, everyone around you is trashed, is a very heavy exercise. So this thing of drawing or of going when I can on Saturdays or Sundays to my friend to make sculptures is like taking infusion to clean your blood, is like diluting the poison, you know. And when there are very tense situations, I know only one thing, that my production grows. So Linda, my better half, who has the keys of my sanity, she was telling me today, because she has a very well working memory, unlike me. She was telling me today how in a period of tension, precise periods, the production grew very much, because it's the need to dilute the poison. It's not that I do it in purpose. It's not that I go there and I say, okay, I need to take the infusion, but it comes naturally. So, and in that I feel blessed, because time is used for two things. So on one hand, to fight and to get the hands completely dirty by having to deal with all type of things, and on the other hand, praying, which is totally personal and is like so. I do this in the same time, and with the exception, as I said, of the sculptures that allow me to go and to have my hands dirty for real, not symbolically, with the clay, so I don't touch the source of poison, which is this thing here, where everything comes by the second, and 85% is bad news.
And for you, when you finish a doodle, when you finish a piece of work, do you consider that right away stepping into the realm of art, and you like to separate the political and the artistic, or do you allow for some overlap between the two?
No, when I feel that it's finished, I take it from my desk and I leave it in the floor, and my assistant knows exactly, if it's on my desk, it's not to be touched. If it's on the floor, it's to be collected. So this is the only thing, but the activity in office goes on without even thinking of that part.
Okay. And on the topic of time passing.
No, I just, speaking of the drawings of edits, I think what is also very interesting is the relation to materiality, because being at once, to put it bluntly, an artist and a politician, this very interesting interval full of tensions, but also full of different ways of operating. So there is a relation to materiality, which is the one of we spoke a bit about it, of the politician, which the materiality of the politician, it goes as far as other people's lives and future. And the materiality of the artist can go and dance with these issues, but it's still about something that is between you and you. It's much more material. So there is, whereas the doodles or the sculptures of wanting to put the hands in, I also thought of it as a desire to still make contact with the materiality, which is not under the observation and the judgment fully of the people. And I think this is also one of the fascinating tensions that in my mind, Eddie has been living with since he came back to Albania after Paris, is being an artist and refusing to be understood. I mean, this is one of the things of me understanding from Eddie very early on, to go back to the it's a necessity, the privilege of not being understood, how important it is in the process of you becoming yourself. And the politicians need, I don't know about the desire, but need to be understood, to be clear. And this is also why, for example, we're talking about this conversation about, and I said, oh, let's change the word change for becoming, because change is, first of all, it's a very heavily intoxicated word for political reasons, especially from the 90s onwards, but also carries a finality, whereas becoming is allowed to not know where it goes, is allowed not to have a destination. And I think this is where, in that sense, being an artist is interesting, because the way you deal with process, for example, it does not mean that every actualization destroys the potentialization of what the thing could have been otherwise. And seeing it from outside, maybe I'm wrong, but when I follow Eddie, and my intuition is that in politics, actualization also kills a part of the potentialization, because what is already done, it means everything which is outside of what is done does no longer exist. So I think these are tensions that having them in this parenthesis between being an artist and the politician, within the same time, within the same day, I think it's something that always intrigued me about Eddie's creativity, both as a politician but also as an artist.
Yeah, it's fascinating to have that dual role and to be able to separate, but at the same time keep it combined and coherent. And speaking of materiality, I wanted to segue into your bronze and sculptural work. Because you've spoken about how your drawings on something that is already pre-inked and something that already exists takes away the fear of an empty page. So it's a very smart way of working around an artistic blockage. And so in that sense, you begin drawing from something that's already there. Meanwhile, in your sculpture work, you seem to operate with a completely inverse logic, because you start from something that is nothing. It's the tabula rasa, so beginning from a clear slate. And yet the gestures themselves, they felt very intuitive and spontaneous, very much alike, very much similar, in a similar manner to your works in paper. So I feel like there's a very interesting shift that we can recognize from working from something defined, that is the government papers, to starting from something completely blank. But then recently you've made a decision to base your sculptural works on your office drawings, and that's something that you can see currently at Société during your exhibition. And so that, I feel like it introduces a sense of continuity and circularity in your production, because suddenly the division between the two dissolves. So could you tell us a little bit more why that shift happened, and how do you understand the relationship between your sculpture work and your work on paper now versus before?
Listen, I told you how it started with the drawings. I tell you how it started with the sculptures. Again, not because I decided or because I felt any intellectual necessity to go from drawing to sculptures, but because my mother, God bless her soul, got a present from an old friend of mine who is a sculptor and who is a ceramist, and who very kindly thought of her and took some of my drawings and just printed them on the plates and cooked them. So my mother was very happy. And I just went to see him after I don't know how many years, and to thank him for this kind gesture. And when I went to his atelier, he had a model in clay, still fresh, for a vase. I started to touch, and it never went away from me, and I started to go back and back and back to his atelier any time I could during Saturday, Sunday. So I have played sport, but I'm not good in going to gym. I want to believe that God exists, but I'm not good in going to church. So the church and the gym on Sunday morning for me, or Saturday morning, is to go to the atelier whenever I can, not every Saturday or Sunday. So this is how this developed, and when it comes to the show in the gallery here, Société, with the bronze, it's a new thing that connects the drawings with the sculptures directly, because, as Anri can also explain better than me, the sculptures have continued to be doodles in a way, with the only difference that I didn't do them while talking politics or listening to my Minister of Finance about the impossibility to get more money for this or that, but I did them, and I do them just listening my friends in the atelier about whatever he wants to talk, or not listen to anyone. This cycle started because we have the bless in Albania to have a very large and exceptional number of international architects, and I want to thank Francis Kere for being here, and also some other friends that are in Berlin and work in Albania with us for being here. So I think Albania is the only place today in the world where you can find all these architects in the same time doing work. And on the way, something came out about artificial intelligence and architecture. And it's an Albanian startup. And then I talked to the guys about my drawings. I said to them, can we see what we can do? Because if a line can become a building, a doodle can become a sculpture, no? And then from that, we moved a bit further with my friend, and so practically it's a more back and forth process. It's not simply take the doodle and make a sculpture, but is take the doodle, use it as a DNA to first produce a 3D printed form, then work on it with your hands, bring it back to the artificial intelligence to make it bigger, and then work again with your hands, and then go to the foundry. So it's a bit, more elaborated than it was before, but it's part of the same process. And yeah, it's really very fulfilling to do that when I have the time. Sometimes I have to call him and say, listen, I can't come because there is a flood somewhere, or I can't come because somewhere some people want me to go to solve a matter of conflict, and being on the center left, we are great at fighting each other, much better than the center right. So for different reasons, I cannot go as much as I wish.
It seems to me like the works in paper are very tightly conjoined with the world of politics. Meanwhile, a sculpture is more of a safe haven for you. But to me, the change, the decision to, as I said, to use your drawings to then become bronze works is actually a suggestion that you're entering a sphere of multiple temporalities, because the drawings to me are a record of a present moment, so the moment on right now when it happens when you're speaking to someone. Meanwhile, the change from 2D to 3D in your work suddenly gives it a different dimension, and you're entering the future with it. And that brings me to Anri's practice, and it reminds me of your position on music, because you said that you're interested in music and because of its quality of being in the present, but at the same time eroding the past and the future, but also very much interesting in the present where the past and future coexist. And this is why you rework your old compositions, so like classical music or compositions which are known whether historically, but and you apply a future logic to it. So I just wondered how conscious is that negotiation between the present, the past, and the future in your work? Maybe I can start with Anri.
Indeed, I mean, it's also just by reading there are studies that seem to come to the result that the longest present moment happen in music. Meaning, which is also understandably because language, because of the way how the sentence is formed with the verbs, etc., you can finish the sentence of somebody. Because so within the sentence, you are aware of what became, what is continuing, and how it will end. In music, this is much longer. It's not ever ending, but they say it could go up to 8 seconds of duration. And then, of course, you have the cultural dimension in it, because, of course, if we're talking about piano music of a certain, one could also say, oh, but I could also finish this music. But if we are staying within the human dimension without entering in the differences between the sensibilities and the civilizations, so to say. I think this idea of the music brings me to the idea of being immersed, no? Because like the drawings of Eddie, the doodles, it's like these moments of being immersed in it. And one example in my work, for example, is Long Sorrow with Jamil Mundok being suspended here in Berlin, in Hackescher Markt, on the 18th floor outside of a window, scientifically sure that he could not fall, however, psychologically not safe at all, but because he was a jazz musician, and I don't mean in terms of the style, but in the relation to the sound, really reinventing and inventing the moment that comes next, this is what allowed him to survive being suspended in this long present moment. So this is a form of immersion which translates differently in Eddie's work and in my work. And this is also that accompanied this moment of me going away from language, going through a moment of silence. There are a few works where silent is not a lack of sound, but it's just like a lack of tamed content, of organized content, and then eventually that led to music. But I wanted to also add something about this moment of passing between, like what happens also between doodles, the drawings and the sculptures, because it's also a matter of where the focus is. The doodles are a little bit like this, the principle of the 3D cinema, because when Eddie is drawing them, his focus of the eye is on the doodle, and the focus of the mind is on the content of the meeting, of what is happening. So it's a bit of a, and this is what keeps the doodle be 2D. Like, and the 3D cinema is when you put the two shots close enough the way they've been shot, and this is produces the 3D, and this is what happens with the sculptures, because the focus of his gaze, the focus of his hands are coming together, and this is, I find it interesting how poetically this is the moment where the same thing becomes in volume, becomes 3D, but it's also a moment where his focus is entirely within dedicated to that object in becoming. Without, which does not mean that it takes away anything of the reverie, or of course it's there, but physically speaking, physiologically speaking, both focuses are in one place, and at that moment the 2D becomes 3D.
I think the topic of focus is interesting, and again, another strain of commonality here, because that's something that you also do in your work. I believe that you take away from the dominance of the image and instead leads the focus through the sound, and the sound might emerge somewhere else. So I think both of your practices can be very unexpected and surprising in that manner. And to continue, I think since the title of the conversation opens with intuition, I wanted to ask what is the role of intuition in your work, whether political or artistic?
You know, as I said in the beginning, I don't really think about these things. So, but trying to answer, I think in every process we are both. We are them who do something, and also we are them who are influenced by what we are doing. So I think that at the end of process, we are not anymore the same people that we were in the beginning. Of course, this doesn't mean that we are someone else. We are the same people, but we think differently about certain things, or feel differently from what we thought and felt before having that experience or that experience or that experience. And the experience of creating is very strongly influential on you if you are able also to follow where the work will bring you. But in the same time, it's the same, I think, in politics. You know, you have to interact with many people in many layers, and it's by no doubt that while you try to change, you change, and while you try to bring change, you are affected by what you try to do, or what you do, for good or for bad. So it's in its substance is a painful process. The difference is that in the practice of creating a painting, a sculpture, or whatever that is solo, you deal with materials. In the practice of politics, you deal with people. So people are your chance to come up with something or not. So we were talking before we started that it's very interesting. I don't think you know that the most fired person in the political practice is the person who deals with the agenda or the schedule, because the schedule is practically your table of material. So in the personal practice of art, you put on the table whatever you want, and you have that. You have. In the practice of politics, to get to results, you have to put on the table just your plan or your idea, and then you have to cooperate with sometimes a whole population to get the results. So these are two different things, but at the end, one thing is sure, that I mean, for me, that you do your work. Your work does you. You make a building, the building makes you. You make a an exhibition, the exhibition makes you. So it's very, very obvious to me. And in this, the intuition is key, because you always need intuition to understand where is the path, to understand where is the moment you have to say, as you asked, this is finished, to understand if something else is needed and so on. For example, I was very much, how to say, commented and very much in the spotlight when I started to paint the buildings with the colors in Tirana. And by the way, it was the first news that got out of Albania that was not bad news. After 10 years of crime and organized crime and petty crime and colorful crime and black and white crime, it was the first time that some papers were writing something positive. And it was just a pure intuition. It was not something I planned. It was not something I wanted. It was not something I imagined. It was not something I knew where it will go. I simply didn't have any other thing. You know, I became mayor, and the budget of the whole capital city was nothing point something. At that time in autumn, everything was spent. People elected me with a big majority. They were expecting me to solve all their problems. And what could I do? In a city that literally, not metaphorically, had only 78 lamps still working in the streets when the night would fall. So imagine. And I had this intuition because it was the only project that was ongoing. European Union paid few millions to fix the sidewalks and to fix the facades. You have to understand it. I'm talking about the year 2000. From 1999 to 2000, for 10 years, we in Albania did only one thing: occupied the public space. Because for 50 years, we had only public space. We had no private property, we had no private cars, we had no private nothing. Even our life was not private. We belonged to a cause. And so for 10 years, people went on the other side of the pendulum. So every place had to be occupied. So cutting trees and planting and putting kiosks and putting this. So we lost every meter square of green. We lost, and everyone was taking care of its own apartment, not what the building would look outside, not how the street would look. During communism, we didn't have, so TV sets were given only with authorization to very trusted people. Telephones, the same. Refrigerators, the same. So it was not, there were not things that you could buy. So with the opening, the market was flooded by all these things. And the city was full of this emballage boxes thrown in the street. And people broke the windows in the first floors to make doors and to transform their bedroom in a flower shop, to transform their kitchen in a shoe shop, to do business. Them in the last floor, they broke the ceiling to add more. Them in the middle made of the balcony a space to get in. So, but nobody cared about the outside. So it was like the whole population became deconstructivist architects. So pushing from inside and transforming the inside, but destroying the outside. So I had this intuition. I said, how you will paint the facades? And they said to me, it's original painting. I said, but it's not anymore the same building. It's a different one. These cubes, this thing. So we started with the colors. And the colors transformed the atmosphere in the city where everything was gloom and doom, you know? Nobody was caring anymore about what united us. Everyone was caring about how to get abroad, how to get how to get a Mercedes, because Albanians are obsessed about Mercedes, because the nomenclatura had Mercedes, so to have a Mercedes was like telling the regime that is gone, rot in hell because the Mercedes is mine now. And everyone started to talk about the colors. So in all radios, in parliament, the colors, what the colors are doing to us, the colors. The city had no water, the city had no electricity, the city had no roads, the city had no public transport. The colors became the problem. And what I didn't see coming was that in the painted roads, people started to pay taxes. So tax revenue of municipality was 4%. In the painted roads became 100% because people started to feel that something was changing, that the city belonged to them and so on. So it was pure intuition. If you ask me how I came to that, I'm telling you, just because of necessity. It was politics. It was not aesthetical or artistical. It was just politics, not with money, but with colors, because I didn't have money.
I remember in one of your interviews, you said that it was not simply a beautification exercise, but it was something...
It was not beautification. It was just to give a sign, hey, guys, the city is ours, and everyone has to re-get the sense of belonging to the city. And that was it.
But through something shared, in that sense. Yeah.
Shared, exactly. This was the thing.
Yeah. I think that to speak on the idea of something shared, I feel like that you completely changed the meaning of the word shared. Coming from one of the most extreme Stalinist regimes in Europe, where the word was extremely charged, and this goes back to what you speak about language, Anri, which is why you moved away from it. It's basically when the collective was imposed and wasn't chosen. And so what you showed people, in fact, is that shared can be something else. It can be a shared...
Yes, but it's also tricky because I remember I had two big, not troubles because I look for troubles, but two big blows. One in Switzerland, one in Frankfurt. In Switzerland, because I started to be invited to show the colors and the city and all this, as you mentioned in the occasion you were. And in Switzerland, the first question was how you collect the opinions of people for the colors you decide. I said, I don't. He said, what do you mean you don't? I said, I don't. Painting cannot be democratic. It's not possible. If I ask old people, it will be gray. And it was they were shocked. So you don't ask the people what the color they want the balcony or what color they want the... I said, no, I don't. And sometimes I am in trouble because, for example, a very staunch right-wing militant find himself in a red balcony and he is terrified. And he writes to me, I'm not a communist, I hate you. Change the color. It doesn't say take off, it says change the color, I want blue. Okay. Another one writing, what you did to my grandmother, the only moment she gets out is in the balcony and suddenly the balcony is black and she feels in the grave already, so change. And it was a big scandal there. In Frankfurt, it was different. They were fascinated. And first question was, what you do if you would be mayor of Frankfurt? I said I would commit suicide. And I tried to explain, because I became mayor of Tirana because there was an opportunity to change. What do you change in Frankfurt? You cannot change anything in Frankfurt. So you just have to warm up the soup of the last day. And this is not, so it was shared a lot in the process, but was not, it was a decision to share the space, but by putting the colors as the mediator. And as a matter of fact, the noise was so big in the audience, in the public opinion, that I thought that I was losing it. So I made a survey, which is my favorite survey since, with 2 questions. Do you like the operation of the mayor with the colors, and do you want it to continue or to stop? 63% said we like it. This was a relief. But 85% wanted it to continue. So half of them who didn't like it didn't want it to stop, because they felt that something was there,
Perhaps it's the resistance of the unknown and...
But she's bringing us back in time, long time. It means we didn't improve much, What we are worth is just what we did when at least when I was young, because he's young still.
But I think, speaking of intuition and time, I think my intuition tells me we're running out of time. Yes.
Yeah, there is a boy there who is trying, but I know you are German, but there is nothing worse as an idea than to invite 2 men from the Balkan and to think the conversation can end in time. This is
There's only one more question.
complete failure, premeditated failure. So
We don't want it to stop. We just want to open it up. That's all.
okay.
Can we just conclude with the final question? Okay, because
She's even more German than you. She has a plan.
there's a plan. There's a final question. We need it.
She doesn't give up her plan.
Because in one of your shared interviews, you spoke of this approach to painting the city as a process, but that no process can be reused and it has to be adapted. And so clearly right now in Tirana, you can see, Tirana's embarking on a huge change and transformation with the commissioning of the very big architectural studios. So would you say it's the continuation of the project of identity building, of creating shared spaces and shared consciousness, or is this something more about, is this more closely aligned to soft power and increasing Albania's visibility?
Listen, I had the privilege to start the morning with a legend, Daniel Buren. Thanks to my dear friend Kamel Manur, who very graciously is enduring even our Balkan blah, blah, blah. But I mention this because I told him that, to me, the favorite public space in Paris during my life there, where I would go when I needed to feel some different type of breathing, is his columns, black and white columns. And then the conversation went further, and he said, it's gone. Before coming here, we were at the Sony Center. Sony Center was built as an expression of ambition and of strong dreams about their unification and about the new era of Germany and so on. But it's 30 years. So why I'm saying this? Because I so much believe in architecture, and I so much believe that architecture can change the way people think about the place they live, the way people think about themselves, and the way people think about their future. And when I say architecture, architecture is like the pillar, but around it is the public space, is the culture, is the art, and so on. Where is it nowadays in Europe? So the greatest international architects want to come to Albania, not because they have better contracts than in Germany, but first of all, because their contracts in Albania have a chance to be materialized before they have to hand over to someone else, because in Germany it takes I don't know how many years to get the permission and then to, and also because there is this thing, there is this belief in architecture and in what architecture and culture can do to push forward the societies. So, and I will end by bringing Anri back to the conversation. You see, he's not a typical Albanian, you know. And when he was younger, he was even more like a Nordic European. And when he was filming Dami Colori with his, he had a very a jacket with some how it's called, so some rabbit leather here, I don't know. And so he looked like a foreign journalist hanging around. And one day he says to me, Eddie, you know what happens to me when I go with my camera around? When I'm filming in the painted roads or where paint is coming, people want to show themselves to the camera. They feel like, yeah, film me. When I am with the camera, he said, in shitty areas, I listen in Albanian all that my mother would not want to listen. All the curses, all the blame. Why? Because people feel embarrassed, because people feel humiliated already. So I'm already humiliated because look where I live. So now you are with a camera in front of me and you want to film my humiliation? So go to hell. And this reaction should tell us that more we do about architecture, more we do about public space in terms of beauty, in terms of, so, you know, you can't intimidate humiliated people with police. It doesn't work. With beauty, you can uplift them and you can make them shy. So it's very, I've seen it. No, I've seen it. This is one of the things I didn't see coming, but I learned. So all the facades that were dirty, were full of graffiti, full of posters, when they were beautiful and they became like, you know, cubist art, nobody would put a graffiti, you know, they just, why? It's like, it's the silent intimidation of beauty, you know? Of course, you go in a peripheric area and you do a shitty sports camp, they'll destroy it. But if you do something nice, they'll keep it. It's the power to identify with something nice and to be part of it and say, yeah, it's that, but it's me here. So I very strongly believe in that.
And we will conclude on this beautiful note and the unlimited potential of beauty in tackling everything, and open the floor to questions.
I have a microphone right here. And if you signal, I'll come to you.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Stefan. You've mentioned that in kind of transferring from your 2D to 3D work, you do use AI to actually enable that transition. Just from a legal point of view of ownership.
From what?
on the legal point of view.
Yeah, in Germany, the first thing is the legal point of view. I don't have a legal point of view on that.
Fair enough, thank you.
What legal point of view, you know? It's enough for me to think always legal, because for everything I want to do, my legal office come and says, no, 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 Prime Minister, it's not that the way. So I say, whatever is the way, do it, but how much time will take? 2 years, okay. This is the legal consequence. So at least in what I do in my personal life, as creativity life, I didn't ask for a lawyer. And by the way, I have a chart of mine, totally subjective, personal. I don't pretend that anyone agrees with that. But I believe that architects are the favorite sons of God, because the architect is the closest to God. Everyone else does something, but only the architect does a thing that allows others to do. So we are here together conversing because an architect have done that. So, and how it happens, going to legal. It happens that God, during the week, he creates all the rest, you know. And then on Thursday, he starts to think about the weekend, and he creates the economists. On Friday, which is the day when, you know, it's the end of the week, and he created the lawyers. And only on Saturday, he creates the artists. But on Sunday, he wakes up late, puts a beautiful music, and creates only the architects. So you see where the lawyers are, right? Yeah. Any other question on the legality of what we're doing?
Hi, thank you. Hello. Okay. So you're bringing a lot of architects to Albania, which is great. I was wondering if you have a similar intention with bringing artwork people to Albania, whether they're gallerists or curators, or maybe to create a better infrastructure for art in Albania.
Listen, this is, you know, I've realized lately that once I will be able to write a book about my prime ministership, I should write the book not about what I did, but what about I wanted to do and I didn't do. And when I start to count, there are many things that I wanted, I tried, and I didn't, for various reasons. And among these things is one that I don't know. I'm not sure that my hope is anything but, you know, cheering up myself. But it's a project that I'm trying since years, which is called the Robinson Law. It's an idea that takes the name from Robinson Crusoe, of course. The Robinson Law is a law that my lawyers say it's a no-go. It's outrageous. It's hilarious. Nobody will even try to read it in Brussels, because we have to ask Brussels, you know. Not yet for the AI in my sculptures, but for the rest. And the Robinson Law is an idea to give to all creative people a free ride, a totally free life in Albania, and to give them immunity from bureaucracy. Meaning every creative person to get a special passport, which is a passport that gives them full immunity from every bureaucratic interference in his or her life. So nothing, no taxes, nothing, no controls, no inspections, no stops in the street to look if you have a driving license, nothing. So when this person gives that, shows that this person should be totally free, and of course pay the electricity, pay the water, pay the food, and create in Albania. Now, it's not so far from what the diplomats have. So because people say, no, it's not so far from what the diplomats. You cannot find a car of a diplomat. You cannot stop a car of a diplomat. You cannot control the car of a diplomat. Now, okay, you bring the creative people, they would like to smoke, fine, it's their problem. The thing is that if we do this law, we can give to the creative people the opportunity to be in the middle of Europe, in same distance from Paris to Warsaw, and to be free. So this is what I want to do. I still fight with my lawyers, but they are so much against it that I'm not sure I can pull it off.
The trouble with that is that you come and go, but I have friends in Berlin, and it will continue and take time of my time, speaking of time, because they'll ask, what about that passport? What about the thing that Eddie said at the Neue National Gallery? And
yeah, it's,
I have to...
This is how politicians end badly, because everyone then says they are liars, you know? Because they promise, they don't maintain the promise. So your friends can blame me, and that's it. But the thing is that if we would be able to do that, and to give, but to go full. So today, publishing houses have problems, galleries have problems. Others have, to give them the opportunity to install in Albania whatever they want, part of their activity. The architects have problems. The architecture studios in the European Union has so many difficulties to hire people from non-European countries and so on and so further. So to create this kind of Robinson Crusoe feeling with your practice can be a great thing, I guess.
But I think it's also because this is an idea which is poetically very beautiful, but it's a little bit like inviting people in to let them be, which is very beautiful, radical idea. But I think what Licia, it means is also in an organized way, not to let them be, but to create the possibility for more things to happen, meaning for more contact to happen, and enable some reality producing in Tirana or elsewhere in the same way as it has been happening with architecture. Personally, I do think that, but also it's an interesting thing, because I think that happened to me as well. Like, architecture is very close to policy making, because it produces reality in ways that art doesn't. Cinema produces reality in ways that art doesn't, but cannot produce reality in way architecture does. So I think there is also this scale of things that
this is the conceptual side, but the practical side is that the architects have an activity that pays back at the end. So they do a lot of things for us. You know, they donate to us projects for kindergarten or for school or for hospital. I mean, a little hospital, but their activity is big. So the art is, you know, it's not the same. And this is where the complication starts.
Maybe one.
Is there any other question? You are gonna ask me here in front of all these people? You can ask me in for Anri. Sorry.
Can you hear me? Yeah. No, the collaboration is so profound and interesting between the two of you. When you started the Damie Colori project, was it as much a political gesture, impulse, as it was artistic together?
Well, I mean, Eddie answered about clearly about that it was a political act. It was not an act of beautification and aesthetic, but it was by means, by sensory means. What I'd heard about it, it just happened that I went to Tirana at that time. The first few streets had already been painted. I'd seen it, but what triggered me, so I can answer for what triggered me to want to do Damie Colori and with Eddie is the gap, the mathematical gap of this poll that Eddie mentioned before, that there were some 20+% of the people that didn't like what they saw, but they wanted it to continue. Because as an artist, while being visual artist and working, I'm really interested in things that do resist understanding and do resist visibility. Like, how come that there is something in what you see that you do not like, and yet you want it to continue? This is what made it for me to be interested in it. Also, the having the possibility to have this information from Eddie and to discuss these ideas with Eddie that after became Damie Colori.
And that's the ongoing collaboration between the two of you. It crosses.
And I think to go, without wanting to go back to the beginning of the conversation, but maybe to loop it, to make the ending as a beginning, is that from my very first experience with Eddie as a mentor, not formally professor of mine, from the beginning, is that he never taught me visually. He never said about the composition, well, the yellow should be a little bit more orange, maybe you should put this there because there's something missing there, the dynamics there are strong. It was always about something which was above, left, right, before or behind the frame. And I think he has that capacity and has that senses of thinking and feeling things before they become image, before they become a final thing to be seen.
Hi. So my question is for Eddie. So as Prime Minister, you hold power, you shape narratives, influence institutions, but as an artist, you're of course supposed to question power, resist fixed narratives, and explore ambiguity. So my question for you is essentially, can political authority ever coexist with true artistic freedom, or one must inevitably compromise the other?
Listen, I think that it's very dangerous to generalize. It's not a generic question that will give us an appropriate answer in this case, because it's not about the artist and the politician as categories. It's about a particular person in a particular position. And what I don't like in this kind of quest is that you feel that there is a kind of idealization of the artist and a kind of you know, I would say the contrary of the idealization for the politician. Listen, I don't think that artists are by definition creatures to be idealized, and politicians are by definition creatures to be thrown in the garbage. It can be both in both cases. So I think in my personal experience is what I have experienced. In the personal experience of someone else is what someone else will experience. But whomever will experience whatever, one thing is sure. I am the only in the world, the one and only Prime Minister among artists. And the best Prime Minister among artists, by the way, and the best artist among Prime Ministers. This is something I have, and nobody can take it from me. So George Bush tried, but he's not anymore president, so I'm one and only. So this is for sure. The rest, it depends very much from the person, you know, you can't generalize. I have artist friends that when I imagine them, I've seen artist friends becoming ministers. It's horrible. So it's not that they became ministers and they brought something new or something. It's horrible. And I've seen non-artists being very good ministers. So it depends. It's not.
Thank you for that wonderful answer.
And with that, I would love to thank you all three for sharing your thoughts, your journey with us, and want to remind all of you that Crystallize is currently up at Société. And would you please join me in thanking Anri, Sala, Rama.